Hi, this is Shamel Lane with the fourth installment of the video series for Pretty Paper Party. And today we're moving on to something a little different, and I just wanted to show you something that comes from looking at my own albums. And I really like the idea of taking a nod from what you already have and love. So one of the things that you'll find in my albums is that my absolute favorite combination is to use two 4x6 photos on a page, on a 12x12 page, and that they'll both face the same direction. So they'll either both be portrait or they'll both be landscape. So I just grabbed any album off my shelf and wanted to see if indeed the two photo combination was the most popular in the album, and if so, how many layouts had two 4x6 photos. So my layout, I put 20 page protectors in my album, so each album has 40 pages, and there were 7 layouts of the 40 with two 4x6 photos, and nothing else that came close. So there were some single pages, some with smaller photos, some with bigger photos, but the thing that kept repeating was two 4x6 photos. So from that album, I'm just going to show you what came from that little sampling. So here they are in the order found in my album. So here are two portraits with one piece of pattern paper to balance and a big border strip. Two 4x6 photos and a sort of quadrant design, but this piece going all the way across. So not quite quadrants, but the idea of sections to the page. This one has a bit more detail here, and I do like areas where you can just kind of stack things up from something big, getting a little smaller. Oh, and a border sticker in between the two 4x6 photos. Here, two landscapes but side by side, and then emphasizing that horizontal element with 3 strips of pattern paper, and then balancing the horizontal with a vertical stack of smaller paper elements, so die cuts and pieces cut from pattern paper. Two portraits all in a line with various pattern papers either side, and this pattern paper, and this paper for the journaling are all the same collection, so they have the same motifs and the same color scheme, and then balancing that on a paper that's patterned but reads as a neutral and is from a different collection, and using lots of empty space here to balance how much is going on here. Now these accents are from photos, but I wouldn't really count them as photographs. It was just kind of a blurry leaf shot that didn't quite work, so I decided that would be better as an embellishment, which is a little trick you can use on any photo that didn't quite work how you envisaged. This one you may have seen if you've been following along with 4x6 Photo Love. This is the February 4x6 Photo Love example. So two portraits, one big long block, so essentially you've got one vertical and one horizontal so that you're balancing those two elements. And here, 3 of the smaller embellishments that all match, but then I repeated the same colors and patterns in the title, so there are 4 there really. This one, there's really not pretty paper on show at all, but I just wanted to show this one. This is one in color and one in black and white. And then all of these elements are from a sticker sheet. So essentially I used pretty much the entire sticker sheet on one layout. And I'll be honest, it's because I tend to buy Halloween stash, but then I never have Halloween photos. So I just kind of wanted to go with the idea of having Halloween photos and use up what was in my stash, because if I kept this and just used 5 on every Halloween layout, this sticker sheet would last me from now until eternity. I just don't have that many Halloween pictures, but I love the spirit of Halloween, so I tend to buy the stash and fall into the trap. So yeah, there's no other pattern paper. This background, I'm not quite sure if you can see, is a pattern, but it's black on black, where it's part matte and part shiny. So up close there is a pattern, but it's a little bit difficult to see on the camera. Here are 2 landscapes, and then again with sections of the page. So this is not completely unlike this design, where there's part of the page and then another with another pattern paper. Not exactly the same, but a similar idea. This time, instead of putting the border photo between, or the border sticker between the photos, I put it above the photo. And a similar stack here of things getting smaller, but just not quite as many layers on this one. And the last one that was in the album was something that was a bit more free flow. You'll notice that all the others had the photos side by side and quite linear, and even if the rest of the page isn't linear, the photos were. Here, the photos are on an angle, they're not set in a little square. And a circle element from the rhinestones, a lot of different pattern papers going on, but if you look, you'll still find there's one vertical element and there's a horizontal element. But in this case, because there's a lot of pattern, I also brought the circle element in to kind of bring everything important into focus. Okay, so that's a look at lots of different techniques with 2 photos and plenty of pretty paper. So I'm going to grab 2 4x6 photos, and I'm going to walk you through one more layout start to finish so that you can give it a try with your own collection of pretty paper. So go get 2 4x6 photos, hit the pause button, and you can come back and scrap with me. So for this project, I'm heading to a stack of 6x6 pattern papers. So if you ever purchase the 6x6 papers, they're great for card making, but they are also really useful on scrapbook pages if you like to combine patterns. So the patterns I'm using are from Basic Gray's Oxford collection, which was a back-to-school collection this year. And I've pulled these 3 patterns. So I have a red, which is a distressed solid, a blue polka dot, which has light blue circles, navy blue circles, and tiny red circles. And then this multicolored pattern. So the red and the blue are both represented in this pattern, but also some greens and browns. So that will tie all 3 pattern papers together. They'll also bring in the craft colored background. And then these are the 2 photos I'm going to use, and that explains why I wanted something with a bit of green in it, because there's quite a lot of green in the foreground and in the background of the photo. But the red is a nice match to this, the stonework here in the picture. So this is where I'm going to start, and I know that I'm going to keep these 2 4x6 photos together. But the first thing I wanted to show you was how to decide which photo goes where. And here is how they just kind of fell onto the table. But this one is very angled, where this one is very much straight out to the camera. If I swap these around, the lines of the photos then create a corner here, how this one is angled in. So it's almost as if I've rounded the corner of this design, and that helps bring the focus onto the page. Now, I don't always follow this rule, but it's a good idea to, unless you really purposely want someone to look off the page, that you have them look or be bent into the page. So I'm going to keep it like this, but there's also another reason for that. I'm going to use the multicolored dot up here and the blue dot here, because I don't want the 2 dot prints together. I want the solid to break them so that it doesn't just kind of look like, this is just too much, right? There's too many dots, they're not the same kind of dots, too much mayhem going on there. But if I separate the dots and then I have this solid in between, and look now, this brings it together even more, because this photo is then included because the match of the red is here and the photo's in the middle. If the all green photo comes over here, now the color match only comes to here and this photo is kind of out of place, right? So that's my logic. This photo is going to live in this corner, then here, and then I'm going to have this pattern paper and these 2 here. Now, I do want a frame of the craft paper to show, and that means that my 2 6x6 blocks are going to be trimmed, and they are going to need to be trimmed on both sides, because they need to be, this set of elements needs to be smaller than 12 by 12. So I'll make a mark to where I'm going to trim this piece, and I'll trim 1 box, and then I'll come back and make sure that the last box is exactly the right measurement, so that when I put it all together, it's going to fit nice and square on the craft background. Now the problem with the 3 patterns I had chosen is that none of them are very good for writing on. And there was a lovely piece of striped ledger paper in the same pack. So I went ahead and cut a smaller piece, so there's the full 6x6, and just ran this in the middle so that this edge lines up with the photo. And now I know I'll have somewhere to journal. So now I can look and evaluate where I would put embellishment and the title and the journaling. So I know my journaling is going to go here, my photos are here, and I want to include something on an angle. So what I would normally go for is that this space has more room, and more room means more room for a title, because titles for me tend to be bigger than embellishments. So my title is going to live somewhere on this block, which means I probably want embellishment on angle, which makes sense because I could put embellishment up here. And that way there's a diagonal line that crosses the photographs. So just like we've talked about several times, that means that once an embellishment catches your eye, it will keep going and it will take in all the important elements of the page. And then once I've put all of that in place, I'll probably look then to see if there's anywhere else that needs a little embellishment. And my guess is that if I have embellishment here, which leads to a title here, which will match with the embellishment, and the journaling here, I'll probably want a tiny little bit of embellishment either right here or right here to kind of close that off and make sure that it doesn't feel like this red space is just nothingness. And that will help bring the color in to finish the entire page. So this is the stage that I am to now, and then I'll show you the whole page. And here's my finished layout, which just goes to show sometimes the plan that you first come up with isn't what works in the end. So I decided that having several clusters of embellishment was just going to be a little bit too much, and I wanted to make sure that the focus stayed on the photos. So I started with these embellishments up here with the idea that they would come off the page. But these particular rosettes, because they are dimensional, just seemed like they would work better in the middle of the page. So I took this cluster, moved it down, and that fit well with the journaling, and added a few little pearls throughout here to kind of give it a little bit just a different finish. So you've got the flatness of the paper and the plastic of the buttons, but also then the pearl. And repeated the letter stickers on the diagonal. And so a similar technique, but for the design, but a little bit different in execution than what I thought when I originally was going to go on an angle from here to here. So 2 photos, 6x6 pattern papers cut down a little bit, and a finished layout in very little time with a lots of pattern from lots of pretty paper. So I hope you will grab 2 4x6 photos and give it a try. I'd love to see the different combinations you come up with. Happy scrapping!